He was a spoiled billionaire who believed every woman had a price. But when a quiet church girl said no, his entire world flipped upside down. What she did next didn't just humble him. It left even his powerful father completely speechless. Stay tuned because you are about to watch a beautiful story and find out what happened next. Hello, family. Welcome to Tales Haven. Kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more beautiful stories. Thank you as you do so. Sit back, relax as we dive into the story. Julian Stonewell was the kind of man who walked into a room and expected everyone to stop and stare. And most times, they did. He was tall, handsome, and always dressed in designer clothes. His hair was neatly trimmed, his shoes always polished, and his smile. Well, that smile had won the hearts of more women than he could count. But what truly set him apart was his last name, Stonewell. His father, Charles Stonewell, was a powerful billionaire and owner of one of the biggest real estate empires in the country. Mansions, hotels, shopping malls, if it had walls and doors, Charles probably owned it. And because of that, Julian lived like a prince. Private jets, exotic vacations, five-star restaurants, unlimited money, unlimited attention. And over time, Julian began to believe something dangerous. That every person had a price, especially women. At age 32, Julian had never been in a real relationship. He didn't believe in love. To him, love was just a word poor people used when they couldn't afford options. When he wanted a date, he got one. When he wanted a woman, he offered gifts, and they never said no. He was used to being wanted, chased, admired, even worshipped. That's why, when his father told him one Sunday morning, "You're coming to church with me today," Julian laughed out loud. "You're joking, right?" he asked, sipping from his gold-trimmed espresso cup. "I'm not. Either you come, or I cancel your new Ferrari order," Charles replied, not blinking. Julian stared at him. "You wouldn't dare." "Watch me." So Julian found himself sitting stiffly in a wooden pew at Riverbend Grace Church, bored out of his mind. His expensive cologne filled the air around him. His phone buzzed with texts from models and influencers. He leaned back, yawning, until something shifted. She walked in quietly, wearing a simple lavender dress and no makeup. Her hair was tied in a soft bun, and her eyes were calm and kind. She didn't walk like she wanted attention. She didn't even glance at anyone around her. She just took her seat, bowed her head, and prayed. Julian stared. There was something strange about her peace. Something powerful. She didn't try to impress anyone. She didn't seem to notice him. And that bothered him deeply. Who was this girl who didn't look at him twice? After the service, people gathered outside to chat, laugh, and sip lemonade. Julian waited by the steps, watching the mysterious girl walk toward the parking lot. He quickly caught up. "Hey," he said, flashing his perfect smile. "I haven't seen you around before." She turned, and for the first time, their eyes met. Her voice was calm and soft. "Hi. What's your name?" he asked. "Gracelyn. But most people call me Grace." He smiled. "That's beautiful. I'm Julian." She nodded politely. "I know." He chuckled. "Of course you do." She looked at him without emotion. "Can I help you with something?" "Well," he said, stepping closer, "I was wondering if you'd like to go out sometime. Maybe lunch? Or dinner on my rooftop. It has a view of the whole city." Grace's face didn't change. She looked directly into his eyes and said gently, "No, thank you." Julian blinked. "Wait, what?" "I'm not interested," she said. He raised an eyebrow. "Do you know who I am?" "Yes," she replied. "But I also know who I am." Then she smiled politely and walked away. Julian stood there, confused and annoyed, his pride bruised. He turned to see some people still talking nearby. Some had seen the moment. A young usher even smirked. That made it worse. Julian had been rejected before, but not like this. This wasn't a maybe later. This wasn't I have a boyfriend. This was a clear, powerful no, without fear, without apology. And that made her unforgettable. Later that night, Julian sat alone in his high-rise apartment, looking out at the city skyline. but all he could see was Grace, that calm girl who didn't care about his money, his name, or his charm. Who was she? Why wasn't she interested? And why did he suddenly care so much? By Monday morning, Julian sat in his office at Stonewell Enterprises, staring blankly at his laptop screen. A business proposal sat open, but he hadn't read a single word. His assistant knocked and came in with a list of models confirming for the next luxury fashion event he was sponsoring. "Should I confirm the VIP suite for you and Maya?" she asked. Julian blinked. "No." "Cancel it." The assistant stared. "Sir, I said cancel it." He stood up, grabbed his jacket, and walked out. That same evening, he called in a favor. One of the older men from church, Deacon Henry, who had known his father for years, was happy to help. "Oh yes, Grace James. Fine young woman. Teaches the children's Bible class, volunteers at the nursing home, helps with the food pantry, quiet, humble, good heart." Julian tried not to let his surprise show. "She has no social media," Henry added. "She lives in a small apartment on East Willow Street with another church girl, Nicole." Julian nodded slowly. "Thank you, sir." But Henry wasn't done. "Julian, be careful," he said with a fatherly tone. "Grace is not a woman to play games with. She's not flashy. She's not after money. She's built from something deeper." Julian gave a respectful smile. "That's exactly why I want to talk to her." On Sunday, Julian returned to Riverbend Grace Church, this time without his father dragging him. He wore a plain navy blue shirt, light gray pants, and no jewelry. No fancy shoes. No cologne. He wanted Grace to see him, not the brand. He walked in and sat 3 rows behind where Grace had sat last time. He tried to follow the service, but his mind kept drifting toward her. As the choir sang and people clapped, Grace stood quietly, her eyes closed, her hands lightly folded. She looked peaceful, like she was having a real conversation with God. When the service ended, Julian stepped outside and waited. He saw her coming down the steps, holding her Bible. "Grace," he said, walking over. She looked at him, surprised but calm. "You're back." He nodded. "I came not for the Ferrari, but for you." She tilted her head slightly. "You came back just to see me?" "No," he said quickly. "I came back because I couldn't stop thinking about what you said." Grace paused, eyes narrowing. "What exactly did I say?" "You told me no." Without fear. Without flattery. You didn't even hesitate. She waited. Julian continued. "I've never been told no like that. And I realized I've been chasing everything for the wrong reasons." He scratched the back of his neck, then smiled faintly. "And I don't want to be that guy anymore." Grace studied him for a moment. "Julian," she said softly, "I don't hate you. I just don't trust men who think kindness is a transaction." He nodded. "Fair. You're used to women chasing after your money. But I'm not chasing you, Julian. And I never will." "I know," he said. "That's why I want to do this the right way." She raised an eyebrow. "What does that mean?" He smiled. "It means I'm coming back to church. Every Sunday. Not to win you, but to learn." Grace looked at him for a long time. Her face remained calm, but something in her eyes softened. "Well," she said slowly, "we'll see if that's true." Then she walked past him, again. But this time, just before she stepped into her friend's car, she glanced back and smiled. From that moment, Julian kept coming back. Every Sunday morning, rain or shine, he sat quietly in the second row. He listened to the sermons. He helped move chairs. He even stayed afterward to sweep the floor. People began noticing. The same women who used to flock to his luxury parties now whispered in church aisles. "Is that really Julian Stonewell? What's he doing here? Did he cut his hair?" But Julian ignored them. He had one focus, becoming someone better. Not just for Grace, but for himself. One Wednesday evening, after a Bible study class, he saw Grace stacking chairs in the children's room. He walked over and picked one up. "You're serious about this," she said. "I am." "You're not faking it to impress me?" Julian smiled. "I'm tired of pretending. You made me realize something. Money can buy comfort, but it can't buy character. Grace looked at him with a quiet pride. Then keep going. As Julian drove home that night, windows down, wind in his hair, he wasn't blasting music or calling a girl. He was thinking about Grace's smile and how it made him feel more alive than any private jet ever had. He didn't know what was ahead. But for the first time in his life, he didn't need to win. He just needed to grow. Julian kept attending church week after week. He showed up early, stayed behind to help, and even joined the men's Bible group on Thursday evenings. At first, people were curious. Some thought it was just a phase. Some whispered that he was only chasing Grace. But Julian didn't care. He wasn't there to prove anything to them. He was there to become a man Grace could trust, and a man he could respect. Grace saw the change. She noticed how Julian no longer needed attention. He started greeting the elderly with a warm smile, listening instead of talking, even spending quiet moments in prayer. He wasn't perfect, but he was genuine. Still, Grace held back her heart. She liked him, more than she wanted to admit, but she also knew what happened when women gave their hearts too soon. She needed more than words. She needed time, truth, and consistency. And Julian was ready to give it. Or so he thought. One Friday evening, while Julian was walking out of the youth center after helping paint the basketball court, his phone buzzed. Maya, an old flame. She was bold, beautiful, and one of the women who once enjoyed his money more than his company. She had seen pictures of Julian attending church, and out of curiosity, or jealousy, she messaged him. You've gone quiet. Miss me? Julian sighed. I'm different now. Let me see that in person. I'm in town tonight. He was about to say no, but something in him hesitated. That night, Julian agreed to meet Maya at a cafe, not for anything romantic, just to talk. Or so he told himself. She wore a tight red dress, heels too high for walking, and her usual overconfident smile. She leaned forward across the table and said in a low voice, Don't tell me you've really turned into one of those church boys. Julian smiled weakly. Let's just say I've seen life from a better lens lately. Maya touched his hand playfully. Still handsome. Still rich. Still mine if you want. Julian quickly pulled his hand away. I'm not the same man anymore. Oh, please, Maya laughed. You think that church girl is better than me? Julian's eyes narrowed. Don't talk about her. Why not? Afraid I'll ruin your little project? She mocked. Julian stood up. This was a mistake. He left the cafe and didn't look back. But what he didn't know, someone had seen him. Nicole, Grace's roommate, had passed by the cafe and noticed Julian sitting with Maya. She didn't hear the conversation. She didn't know the context. All she saw was Julian laughing with another woman in a red dress. And that was enough. That night, Grace sat on the couch, reading, when Nicole walked in and sat down beside her. I hate to say this, Nicole said slowly, but I saw Julian tonight at Café Vera. Grace looked up. Nicole continued. He was with a woman. Dressed like, well, not someone from church. Grace felt her heart sink. She tried to stay calm. Did he see you? No. I didn't interrupt. I thought you should know. Grace said nothing. But inside, her chest felt heavy. The next day, Julian showed up at the food pantry like always. Grace was there sorting canned goods. She barely looked at him. Hey, he said gently. Hi. He noticed her tone, cold, guarded. Is something wrong? He asked. She turned, eyes serious. Were you at Café Vera last night? Julian sighed. Yes. With a woman? Yes. Her name is Maya. Grace looked disappointed. And who is she? Someone from my past. She reached out. I met her to end things clearly. And did you? I did, he said firmly. She tried to pull me back into the old Julian. I walked out. Grace crossed her arms. Why didn't you tell me? I didn't think I had to. We're not dating. She looked at him. You're right. We're not. But if you're trying to win my trust, Julian's secrets won't help. He swallowed. I didn't mean to hide it. I just didn't want to ruin what we're building. Grace nodded slowly, then looked down. I believe people can change, Julian. But real change requires honesty, even when it's uncomfortable. Julian nodded, guilt on his face. You're right. I should have told you. There was a moment of silence. Then Grace said, softly but firmly, let's take a step back. Just for a while. Julian's heart dropped. Grace, she gave a sad smile. If what we have is real, it will stand the test of time, even distance. That evening, Julian sat alone in his car, hands on the steering wheel, replaying every word she said. He had lost her trust, not because he cheated, but because he didn't communicate. And for someone like Grace, that was everything. But deep inside, Grace was hurting too. She missed his presence, his growth, his sincerity. But she needed him to understand. If he couldn't respect her boundaries, he wasn't ready for her love. For the first time in weeks, Julian didn't show up to church. He couldn't. After Grace asked for space, he felt lost. Empty. Like a part of him had gone quiet. His mornings felt slower. His evenings darker. The food pantry, the youth group, the Bible study, he skipped them all. He was ashamed. Not because he had done something terrible, but because he had let down the only woman who truly believed in his growth. And it hurt. Back at Riverbend Grace Church, Grace kept serving. She swept the children's room, taught Bible lessons, prayed with the elderly, and smiled when she had to. But deep inside, she missed Julian. She missed the way he listened, the way he asked honest questions, the way he didn't pretend to be perfect. But she also knew something important. If he's only strong when I'm near, she whispered in prayer, then he's not ready to love me yet. So she waited. Meanwhile, across the city in a tall glass building, Charles Stonewell leaned back in his office chair. He had been watching everything. From the moment Julian started attending church, Charles had kept tabs. He'd made phone calls, hired a private investigator, even showed up at the church once in disguise just to see for himself. And what he saw surprised him. His arrogant son was different. Humble, quiet, even helpful. It irritated him. So Charles decided to interfere. One morning, Grace was working in the garden outside the nursing home when a black SUV pulled up. A man in a gray suit stepped out and handed her a white envelope. From Mr. Charles Stonewell. She frowned. I don't know why he'd send me anything. The man just nodded. He asked that you read it in private. Then he left. Grace opened the letter and read, Miss James, I've watched my son chase many things in life. Fame, power, women. But never have I seen him lose himself so quickly over something so beneath him. You may be a decent woman, but let's be clear, our worlds don't mix. I built an empire, and I won't let it fall because of a girl who teaches Sunday school and bags groceries. Walk away before things get serious. Or I'll make sure you wish you had. Charles Stonewell. Grace's hands trembled. Her chest tightened. But instead of tears, she smiled. Not out of happiness, but out of clarity. That evening, she packed a small bag and went straight to Stonewell Towers. The receptionist recognized her. Miss James, do you have an appointment? No, Grace said calmly, but Mr. Stonewell will want to see me. Something in her eyes made the woman press the elevator button without question. Grace walked into Charles Stonewell's grand office with confidence. No makeup, no lawyer, no fear. Charles looked up from his desk, surprised. Miss James. That was quick. Grace placed the letter on his desk. I came to return your threat. Charles leaned back. So you read it? I did. And I wanted to say something to your face. He raised an eyebrow. I'm not going to fight you, Grace said gently. Because I don't need your approval. I didn't chase your son. I didn't ask for his heart. He offered it freely. Charles narrowed his eyes. And I never once wanted your money, your name, or your world, she continued. But you need to understand something clearly, Mr. Stonewell. She leaned slightly forward. I am not weak. And I am not afraid of powerful men. Charles was silent. Grace smiled softly. You've built towers with glass and steel. But what your son and I are building, that's built on truth. And truth doesn't fall. She turned to leave, then paused at the door. If you want to stop your son from loving me, try harder. Because your letter didn't scare me. It just proved how empty money can sound when it's used as a weapon. Then she walked out, her head high, her heart steady. The next morning, Charles sat in his office, still holding the letter Grace had returned. His hand trembled just slightly. For the first time in years, he had no response. Meanwhile, Julian was sitting at the edge of his bed when his phone buzzed. A message from his father. She came to my office. You should ask her what she said, because even I was speechless. Julian sat up straight. He grabbed his keys and ran out the door. When he reached Grace's apartment building, he didn't knock immediately. He took a deep breath. Then another. Finally, he knocked. Grace opened the door slowly, unsure. But when she saw his face, tired, honest, vulnerable, she stepped aside. They sat in silence for a moment. I saw my father's message, Julian said. Did you really go there? Grace nodded. Yes. He stared at her. Why? To remind him, and myself, that I'm not afraid. Julian's eyes watered. I never wanted to hurt you. I just didn't know how to be better without you beside me. You have to, she said gently. Because love that needs supervision is not love. It's fear. He nodded. Then she added, but I'm proud of you, Julian. And I'm still here. Julian looked at her with something deeper than love. He saw her strength. He saw her grace. And for the first time in his life, he felt small in the best way possible. The next few weeks passed quietly. Julian didn't rush. He didn't try to prove anything. He simply showed up, not just for Grace, but for the people around him too. He returned to the food pantry every Saturday, but this time, he didn't come dressed to impress. He wore an old gray hoodie and jeans and listened more than he spoke. He swept floors, stacked shelves, and spent time with the kids in the youth group. People stopped whispering. They started smiling when they saw him. Even the pastor, who had once looked at him with caution, now greeted him with warmth. Grace watched all of it, but she didn't say much. She saw his growth. She saw how he no longer craved attention, how he gave without showing off, how he prayed quietly and served quietly. And though she was still careful with her heart, her walls were falling, bit by bit. One Sunday morning, Grace was surprised to see Charles Stonewell walk into church. He wore a dark suit, stood tall, and drew attention the moment he entered. But unlike before, he didn't sit in the back. He sat beside his son. Julian looked shocked at first, but he said nothing. During the service, Charles didn't sing. He didn't close his eyes during prayer. But he stayed. And when it ended, he stood and shook hands like everyone else. Just before walking out, Charles leaned in and whispered to Grace, "You were right. Towers fall, but truth stands." Then he walked away. That afternoon, Julian called the pastor. "Can I speak next Sunday? Just for 5 minutes." The pastor smiled. "You can take the whole pulpit if you want, son." 1 week later, the church was full. Everyone noticed the new energy in the air. Some knew Julian had changed, others were still trying to believe it. Grace sat in her usual spot, heart racing. Julian stepped onto the stage, holding a folded piece of paper, but not reading from it. He looked up at the crowd, then at Grace, then at his father seated beside her. He took a deep breath. "My name is Julian Stonewell," he began, "and for a long time, I thought life was all about power. Money. Getting what I wanted. I treated people like puzzles I could solve or prizes I could win." He paused. "Especially women." A few people stirred. "But then I met someone who didn't care about my name or my money or my charm. A woman who said no to me when everyone else said yes. Not out of pride, but out of purpose." He turned to look directly at Grace. "She didn't change me. She inspired me to change myself." The room was quiet. "I failed her once. I let pride speak louder than truth. But this time, I won't miss the moment." He took something from his jacket pocket, a small black box. He stepped down from the pulpit and walked to Grace, who was frozen in surprise. He opened the box, not with a diamond ring, but with a simple gold necklace shaped like a cross. "Grace," he said gently, "I'm not here to buy your love. I'm here to honor it." He held the necklace out. This necklace is not a gift to impress you. It's a symbol of who I'm choosing to be, a man who leads with faith, not pride. A man who protects, not controls. A man who doesn't need to own your heart to cherish it." Tears spilled from Grace's eyes. She didn't care who was watching. She took the necklace slowly. "Then wear it," she whispered, placing it gently over his neck instead. "You carry the cross and I'll carry you in my prayers." The crowd stood, clapping, crying. Even Charles wiped the corner of his eye. Outside the church, people gathered, still talking about what had just happened. A man who once mocked love had now stood before the world and surrendered his ego. A father who once hated the girl had now respected her strength. And a woman who once said no had just given the world her quietest yes. That evening, Julian and Grace sat beneath the old oak tree behind the church. The sky turned orange with the sunset. Grace rested her head on his shoulder. "You didn't have to go that far," she whispered. Julian smiled. "I didn't go far at all. I just came home to the man I was always meant to be." That brings us to the end of this video. If you find this story worth watching, kindly subscribe to my YouTube channel for more interesting stories, like, and share this video to your friends and loved ones. Your support and engagement encourage me to post more videos. Thanks for watching.